And the time is now 1 o'clock. We'll call our Monday, October 3rd, 2022 meeting to order. We'll start our meeting today with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item on the agenda today is County Attorney Matt Shipman.
I have just a couple things to kind of let you know. We've been running through, a few things we had to deal with for the tax sale, which is coming up. Those are all ironed out with a couple of our constituents whose names you would be familiar with if I mentioned them. We've got that all dealt with. I did just get drafted for Katy and Amy a release that is going to get circulated to be able to burn all the derecho debris that's on the school district. And then we also did receive and has been, I think, dismissed that notice of appeal on the unsafe building ordinance, which I think you guys are aware of. So I don't have anything else other than stuff that's on your agenda, which I can talk about as it comes up.
Okay.
Unless you guys have questions.
Any questions for that?
No.
I do have a question on the derecho trash that's out there, the wood and debris. Can we still take things out there, or is that closed, or?
I was
Katy?
told it was
That's probably
closed.
a Katy question.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep it closed, but unfortunately, there's no way for us to block it off. So, and I want to stress that it's just trees. There's not anything else out there that should be being deposited, but really, there's nothing we can do to enforce it right now. We are asking that people no longer bring any more tree debris to that side.
So it's pretty well closed at this point then, okay,
Until it's gone, I mean, it's also.
okay.
And I think it's roped off, right? I mean, did I see that there's some tape or some rope around it?
There was, I know that there have been people who have removed some of what has been put up, but I know that Amy was also trying to get some numbers for some temporary and things to be put up around it as well, but that was happening.
The plan is end of the month, assuming everything gets figured out, the Thorn Creek Fire Department's going to burn it for us, but we got to get the releases done to make sure.
Good.
It's windfall break is for the kids, so the kids won't be at school. It's enough time for it to burn out before kids come back to their house.
Anything else from that? The next item on the agenda is a surf broadband update.
Jane?
Hey, you want to introduce him? Kind of
So I think many of you know, this is Gene. He is from Surf Broadband, and the proposal has changed dramatically, I think, for the better. So he is here to share that.
Yeah, well, good afternoon. My name is Gene Cruzy. I'm the CEO at Surf. And just to refresh everybody, initially we were talking about a $1.7 million grant from Whitley County's ARPA funds to build rural fiber to the home to about 800 rural residents. Surf was going to match that with about $800,000 of our own money. Since that time, we saw an opportunity to apply for what's called a federal middle mile grant. And so we submitted a grant last Friday for $5.2 million grant from the federal government that Surf is going to match with about $3.3 million of our own money, and we're asking for $1.7 million from the county. The reason that's important, I can go through it in the presentation, but the grant is scored heavily based on the amount of local match. So the grant scores from 0 to 100 points, and by having a local match, you get 15 points. If you don't have a local match, you get 0 to 15, and they throw out all grant applications that are below 80. So in order to be competitive at all, we have to have a local match, and we have to meet all these other criteria. So it's a bit of a goal anyways, but we think it's a great opportunity for Whitley County. So let's just fly through that presentation. So what middle mile means is middle mile is connectivity within an area. So what I put up there is an example of long haul. So we have fiber optic cable that goes from Columbia City to Chicago. That's called long haul because it goes over a long distance. Then there is middle mile, which would be basically inside of Whitley County, which is all those little blue colors you can barely see on the lower right. And then there's last mile, which is all the fiber that you've been seeing Surf put into Columbia City, which is about $5.6 million investment. So on this next page, you can see the middle mile routes that we propose, which is 195 miles of fiber that we're proposing to build in Whitley County in partnership with NTIA if we receive the grant. So the yellow lines are what we call aerial, which means it hangs on utility poles. We're partnering with Northeastern Rural Electric Membership Co-op. And then red is underground, which means we're directional boring the fiber lines underground. The reason this is so attractive is that there just isn't very much middle mile fiber in Whitley County. So to your west, Kosciuszko County Rural Electric Co-op has asked to interconnect with Northeastern REMC, and we're going to use this network to connect those together so that businesses that have locations in Whitley County and Kosciuszko County can interconnect. On top of that, we're working with other providers called WAN-RAC, Ligonier Telephone. We're going to put a connection in place for Heartland REMC if they'd like to do it. We're also going to have a connection for Mercury Wireless if they choose to participate. Anyways, this grant will fund all of those yellow and red lines that you see on that map. And the blue line is the fiber network that Northeastern REMC is currently putting in. So go ahead and hit the next slide, please. Thank you. So basically, it's a $10.5 million project. SURF is going to contribute $3.5 million. We're asking for $1.7 from Whitley County, which I believe you have an ordinance today to talk about. And then we're asking for $5.22 million from the feds. That will allow us to serve around 9,500 residents in Whitley County out of 13,300. So about 70% of the residents by 2026 will have fiber service. And you can see all those little dots. The little white dots are all the residents that would be served by this grant. The green dots are the residents that we're going to serve with our own investment. We're not asking for any dollars from the county for that. And then the other dots are the purples are the dots that would be served by the 1.7 million. All in, it's over a $20 million project, of which I think you're getting great mileage for your 1.7 million of ARPA funds that we're asking for. So 1.7 turns into 20. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is the 100-point scoring system I was talking about. You can see all the criteria. I really don't need to go through it all, other than it's super critical. The last one is to have a non-federal cost share of more than 30%. So if we go to 50%, we get the full 15 points. Keep in mind, everything below 80 gets thrown out. So we will be in a really good position to receive this grant as long as all those other criteria are met. Go ahead and put the next slide, please. Thank you. And then I just want to show you we have great support. We got a letter from the governor. Eric Holcomb wrote a letter saying that he supports this grant, as well as local providers, LakeTel, WAN-RAC, Northeastern REMC. On the next slide is the, which one is that? Oh, from Kosciuszko County REMC. Then on the next slide, we launched a social media campaign and got 275 rural residents from Whitley County to respond. Those red dots are maps of the people that said our broadband stinks. Would you please help us get better broadband? I could read all 275 respondents, but I think this will become public record so you all can see it. And the next page is probably just more of those respondents. So we're here to support the $1.7 million grant. The rest of the slides are just what I've already kind of been through in terms of what we're doing. So I don't know, commissioners, do you have any questions?
Can we get these slides emailed to us?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, you already have a PDF.
Okay.
So the total amount of residents that you're going to supply or work with is going to be 9,000. Is that where?
9,500. That
Is
includes
that
our-
households or residents?
That's household.
So that's not the
Service.
same thing.
Yeah,
And we have
right. There's
13.
13,300 households in the county. We're gonna, by the end of this project, we'll be at 9,500. Now, that includes some areas like Larwell and South Whitley, where one of our competitors has also announced they're gonna build fiber. So we may take those funds and push them more rural. So there's some flexibility. The federal grant won't fund anyone that already has adequate broadband. So the federal grant won't fund Larwell, South Whitley, Columbia City, Churubusco. It's only focused on the rural areas around the county. That's one of the criteria for that grant, is they must be underserved, which today means under 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up. And just kind of refresher, we're gonna offer, initially, we're gonna offer 1 gig on the high end for $85, and we have a $35 a month package. And if you qualify for the Affordable Connectivity Program, you get a $30 discount, so it's $5, $5.
George?
What kind of a schedule do you have on that start?
The grant is expected to be awarded in March next year. We'd like to start the 1.7 in our part as soon as possible, so we can do the engineering on that. So we'd like to start as soon as you can approve it.
Okay. I'll make a motion for a favorable pass to council.
And that is for the ordinance? Sure.
Well, I guess I could make a
What is it?
motion after the
We need to
ordinance is
probably
open.
adopt the ordinance for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you just want it, if we approve the ordinance, then we're also passing that on? Is that what you're indicating?
Well, that's named in the ordinance. It's later on the agenda.
Okay, then I'll wait.
That's section E.
Okay.
So is that your motion? There's a motion on the floor.
If you guys want to discuss the resolution now, we can, as long as you're okay with that, Chairman.
Sure, yep. That'd be fine.
I really don't have anything to add to it. It's everything that we've discussed in meetings multiple times before.
At this point, I think the ordinance will, if approved by commissioners, will go to council tomorrow, and it'll have to be approved by council.
So unless, I'm sorry, do you have more to add?
Matt, you've spent a lot of time at length with the ordinance, with the resolution rather.
Yeah, so, we did work with the direction of, Baker Tilly to make sure that this is a complicated, as most things that come from the federal government are. It's complicated to figure out exactly how to word these things to make it so that it's going to comply. I do feel confident that the resolution that's in front of you does do that. I think what this does then is set the plan in place. My understanding from looking at other communities is that there is then once you have your resolution adopted, there is a separate allocation process that is kind of more geared toward what I think your motion kind of was. This just lays out the plan in general categories, and then there are, at least the way I've seen other counties do it, is they do then authorizing like a specific request for funds to a specific project. This is just a plan. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah. And that being said, the language about broadband infrastructure specifically states that we would work with Surf Air Wireless LLC, DBA Surf, doing business as Surf Broadband Solutions, to expand the current broadband infrastructure in Whitley County by investing $1.7 million in their expansion of services in Whitley County. So the way that's worded, it specifically states that we will support them by providing that 1.7 million to them. Is that right? I mean, and of course, council will have to allocate those funds.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I think yes, I think that's my understanding. I have seen other counties, not every, but other counties then do a specific one-page resolution that says specifically pay Surf this amount of money. That's a Baker Tilly question as to whether that secondary authorizing resolution is necessary to comply with ARPA. I don't know and didn't add. Did you add? I'm not sure if you asked him that.
Asked about.
But
No,
I think
the only thing he
ultimately,
indicated
once the money
is-
is allocated, it's just once the resolution is passed, I think it's just an allocation process. As you spend the money, you have to ask council to appropriate it, just like any other
Okay.
Do you think, though, that we have to really carefully consider the fact that because it's federal funds, we'll have to follow their procurement standards? Which I do have a little bit of information on, but I think that it's a lot more involved than just saying we'll commit these funds to someone. I think we have to actually bid it out.
No, because they're the applicant. We are not.
And Chad, I don't know the answer to that.
And I
That's- you
Did
could
talk
flesh
to
that
Andy
out.
Boxberger.
That would be a Baker Tilly or.
I'll make a motion that what's the resolution number for this? To
2022-10.
approve resolution number 2022-10.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. And opposed, the same. Okay, next item on the agenda is Katy Fry with the annual bid packet and bid notice and US 33 Detour.
Good morning, Katy Fry, the Director of the Highway Department. First thing that I have for you this morning, just something that we do every year is a notice to our bidders for our annual supplies. So such as our gasoline, diesel fuel, asphalt. The couple things that I did add on this year is some of our drainage supplies. Just asking for culvert pipe prices, and then just some other things that we do use pretty routinely between both the highway department and the engineering department. So the verbiage does kind of cover both those bases. Other than that, really kind of the only other thing that was modified was just the format of the bid. So Matt, I don't know if you had the opportunity to kind of read through this or have any kind of objections or anything to offer with it, but it's pretty much the same as all of the other bids other than just the formatting.
Yeah, I mean, it looks the same to me as what we have normally done, so.
The only other thing that I did modify, because the notice to bidders is published, is to get our word count down a little bit. I just asked for the chair's signature as opposed to all three, just so we can have a little bit less to print in the publication when we do put this out in the newspaper publications.
I have no problem with it.
Fine.
You need a formal motion.
Yes, I believe that it needs to be a formal motion to sign that bid.
I will make a motion for Chairman Banks to sign the highway bid for next year.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Okay, next item on the, oh, I'm sorry. You have more.
I do. The second item that I have here is a letter that came from NDOT. They are going to be doing some work on US 33. They're going to be replacing a bridge. And they, during times that they have an official detour within a county, they like to ask for a proposed route for an unofficial detour. And this does give us an opportunity to where NDOT then does an inspection on these roads, and then we'll look at them post-construction. There tends to be a lot more local traffic that will use this rather than people who are using the state through route. But if there's any kind of significant damage, then this gives us an opportunity to then have NDOT then reimburse us for any kind of necessary repairs. So they are just asking for a letter of understanding for the unofficial detour. That does require all three signatures. That just says that they will support, and it would be County Road 550 East to County Road 600 North, and then to County Road 650 East. So either east or west off of 33 there, but that would be the official, well, I guess the unofficial county detour for that project for the bridge replacement.
I'd make a motion that we approve the detour for US 33 over Blue River.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
And I do have one update for the commissioners as well. We did receive our final billing from our community crossings project from NIBLOC. The estimated project cost that we proposed when we applied for the community crossings grant was $1,075,410 completed. And the actual billing was $1,067,990.48. So we are under by $7,419.52 for the project as a whole. So I do have to take a look at the individual billing to see, I know there's a couple of roads that we came in just slightly over or right at, and we still will only receive a certain percentage of that portion that was given to us. But overall, as the project as a whole, we came in under, which is good because construction prices were up. So I was really happy with that. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring back to you guys today, just to kind of ask for your permission for this, and if this does move forward, I just wanted to briefly touch base with council tomorrow to kind of give them an update for the future. But I'm hoping to have an engineering study done for Lincoln Way West to look at what maybe we can do on our part as applying for federal funding to make some improvements to that. We kind of briefly touched on it at the last meeting, and then I was able to kind of speak a little bit of detail to a couple of you about it. But I wanted to know, one, if we had any questions on what the proposed engineering study, what the purpose of it is for, regardless of whether or not we actually do move forward with applying for the federal funds, we would need to have the engineering study completed in order to tell us what the options are. And then what those cost estimates would be in order to know whether or not we're capable of handling the 20% match with the 80% federal funding. But most importantly would be, we would not be asking for any additional funds for the engineering study portion. We do have it in our budget. What I would need to ask the council is then to do a transfer. It's in the same account that I need to do outside the series, so they would just need to approve to move that funding. But with that, if USI were to do our engineering study that we proposed, we would just have to have our authorization to proceed form signed, and then the supplemental agreement then signed for what those differences would be with the current contract that we have in place for them.
So I know that you and I had spoke about that, and 30 West needs some repairs, correct? And everything that we would do, our highway department would do, would just be Band-Aids, correct? And this would be actually going in and redoing the entire road and sections.
Yes, so we wouldn't, the engineering study would be for the entire 10 miles of Lincoln Way West, which would be from the Columbia City limits to the Kosciuszko County line. So the engineering study kind of looks at everything as a whole, such as environmental impacts. It'll look at the safety, whether or not we have a couple of intersections. I do know that our red areas on our heat map for concentrated accident locations. It will take a look at the right-of-way and make sure we have ample right-of-way in there. There's just a numerous list of things that goes into consideration for that. But we would, yes, need to apply for the federal funding in portions because it will be pretty substantial. Lincoln Way West is the second highest traveled county road, aside from 800 East, which would be county line between US 30 and State Road 114. So we looked at doing this portion of it prior to any of the other roads because right now I think that it's kind of up in the air what NDOT is doing with US 30. So Lincoln Way East is kind of, even though it's in a little bit better condition, but the same circumstances there, it makes more sense to look at Lincoln Way West first. And we think that it would probably be beneficial to address numerous things. If we put just a 2-inch asphalt overlay on that, we're looking at about $110,000 to $115,000 a mile. And we could do community crossings for that, but again, we'll have to address it again, probably within 5 to 7 years with the same kind of treatment because of what is underneath it will just continue to reflect through the surface. And then in addition to that, we really would like to do a 10 to 12-inch paved shoulder with probably rumble strips on it. Whitley County is one of the top 10s in the state for roadway lane departures for accidents. So that was one of the things that came up in this study. So rumble strips and having paved shoulders really helps with that, especially on high-speed roads. And the speed limit on Lincoln Way West is 55. So it's just something to kind of take into consideration. And then it would also look at some of those red areas on the heat map for accident locations and see what we need to do to address those to decrease them as far as what our totals are.
I think you said it was an 80-20 grant.
Federal, yes, it would be 80% federal funding and then 20% local match.
Okay. I think it sounds like a great grant to apply for. If we can get those dollars back into our community, I think that would be wonderful. And do we know how much just one section of this would cost?
That's one thing that the engineering assessment will lead us towards. When they do that assessment for the full 10 miles, they'll ideally give us a location that would make the most sense to start and how many miles at a time they think would be the easiest to chew, given the 80-20. Because if you're doing a 20% match of a $2 million project, that's not really that bad. But if it's a $10 million project, 20% is a lot more. So whether or not we can do 2 miles at a time or 5 miles at a time, that's what the engineering assessment will really give us an idea of. And then also how in-depth it needs to be in order to meet the really the remedy that we're looking for rather than just a Band-Aid.
Okay. And I also did speak to USI and they are willing to help with the grant at no cost to the county. So I think it's a great idea. You have the funds available.
For the engineering assessment.
Yeah, that we need to even apply for the grant, so.
Do you have a time frame?
The call it starts, I believe, at the end of the month, and then it's open for about a month. So we're looking at the actual application period will be open for the month of November and close in the month of November. So we're hoping to have everything, well, I've spoke to USI and they said it is possible to have the actual assessment completed within that time frame to still make that call. If we choose to move forward with the application this year, but regardless of whether or not it's this year or next year, we still want to try to go after those federal dollars for this project.
Have you had any conversations with council to see their level of commitment for matching the funds?
I have not, but I don't feel that I can reasonably give council a number because like I said, that it depends on how much we do and then also with what it entails as to what that local match would be. So once we're given those numbers after the engineering assessment, I feel like that then would be an appropriate time to ask council whether or not they're willing to give that commitment. And really, I think that the highway department can budget for most of that. It's also an investment in the county as a whole. So if the council or commissioners do want to contribute, if there's other funds that would be applicable to come from for the 20% match. But I just don't feel comfortable throwing a number out as to what I think that the match may consist of at this time.
I get it. I have no problem with the study. I think the study's a good idea. I think applying for federal grants is a good idea. I just think that at the same time, probably should start having a conversation with council to let them know that you're applying for the grant and try to start getting a level of commitment from them. Because I hate to pay for a study and then be like, holy smoke, we can't afford that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to invest money into something that's realistically not going to happen.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that it's not realistically going to happen. I'm just saying that some level of engagement with council would be.
Yes. And I haven't had the opportunity to speak to council on an official basis as far as like during a public meeting, but I have touched base with, I think, 3 to 4 council members about it. And they're kind of, the few that I've spoke to kind of had the same take that Commissioner Basinger does, where if they're federal dollars, if we don't apply for them and utilize them, then they will go to another community. But again, I think that after that engineering study comes forward, it won't be just one option from what I understand about this is your only remedy, this is the only thing that you can do to fix it. I think they are proposing a multitude of options that comes from that study that will kind of give council an option to dedicate the dollars to where they feel it is most appropriate.
I'll make a motion for a favorable pass on the reallocation of funds so you can get your study done, so we can hopefully apply for a federal grant.
We have a motion. Laura,
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
And then with that, would you feel comfortable signing the authorization to proceed to move forward with that engineering assessment for USI?
Do we know cost?
Yes. So with the engineering assessment and then partnering with the asphalt materials, which consists of them doing, I think it's a couple dozen borings on Lincoln Way West, so we can see what the roadway consists of as a whole. It is $44,000 for that study. And again, that includes the fee from asphalt materials with that laboratory work as well, and all of the results that come with that. And I think that they also had something in here where there was a $22,000 maximum invoice total in 2022. So again, we do have those funds. We would ask for the reallocation of the funds, and then I would most likely just appropriate those funds then at the end of the year to still be able to use them in 2023.
You're going to be at council tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
So then I guess if they did choose that, then Chairman Banks could sign right after the meeting, if that would be okay?
Sure.
I mean, unless,
If you feel that that's appropriate.
I think it would be, because we don't know if they're going to reallocate the funds.
And Matt, would you see any issue if that decision is based upon the council's decision tomorrow with that being
As long as that's the motion, I think
Signed.
that's fine.
retro?
Contingent on their approval.
Have you, did you have a chance to reach out to like Matt Rankman at Region 3A or anybody and see if there's any funding available for studies like these?
I did, and he was more than willing and knowledgeable and was going to get me some more information as far as the federal grant was concerned. But as far as the engineering study portion of it, he did not indicate that there was any kind of an additional funding opportunity available for that portion of it. But they said that they would be more than willing to assist with the federal aid application. And again, was included within the realm of services that the county has with them, as long as it doesn't go beyond a certain point, which he didn't really elaborate on what that was, but he's indicated that there may be additional fees at some point, but I don't recall, or I don't know that he brought up what would cause that.
Anything else, Katie?
That was it.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Do you want to make that another motion for the signing of the commitment? Or was that in?
I will amend my motion for the signing contingent upon and council reallocates the funds.
And I'll second.
So being amendments, do I need to call for another vote?
I'm with you.
So I have a motion and a second for an amendment to the motion. And I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, next item on the agenda is Paula Worden.
Hi Paula, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
It's okay, we have it.
Okay, you do, okay. So Paula Worden, I'm the Director of Community Corrections. I'm here today to request approval of the 2023 Community Corrections Advisory Board meeting dates. And just a reminder that George currently serves on that board, unless you might stay here and not go to court
Don't
next
miss it.
year. But I appreciate all your time and support.
Thank you.
I don't see any issues with the meeting dates. I'll make a motion that we approve the 2023 meeting dates for the Community Corrections Advisory Board.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Nathan Bilger.
Good afternoon, Nathan Bilger, Planning Director. I have two plats and an ordinance for you. I'll start with the plats. I believe I sent out 3 originally. One of them hasn't gotten us a Mylar yet. So the first I'll do is Birchwood Acres amended. This is a replat of Birchwood Acres, which you might remember from late last year, early this year. There was a rezoning that was pending, and they did a 2-lot plat in lieu of rezoning. And anyway, this is coming back to add a 3rd lot, which was approved through the Plan Commission and BZA. So they have their entire property platted for the main landowner and his parents, and then a second landowner as well. So this was passed, approved by the Plan Commission at their September meeting. Any questions?
I think it was unanimously approved on
Yes.
that meeting also. And I'm part of the Plan Commission, and I would ask that I'd make a motion that we approve this.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
The second one, to be called Stetzel Family Farm, is a bit of an unusual one in that what they are doing is a technicality that it requires platting. They are splitting the farm buildings away from the tillable acreage for different reasons won't go into. But because of the way it's being done, it triggers the need for platting under the subdivision code. Long term, they somewhat expect to add the farm buildings back into the surrounding property from which it's being taken, at which point they may vacate the plat. But again, right now, it requires platting. So with that explanation, this too did get approved by the Plan Commission at the September meeting. Any questions on that one?
I'll make a motion to approve the Stetzel Family Farm replat.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you. The ordinance is continued from last meeting, as you might recall. It is the ordinance establishing regulations for solar facilities in the county. It establishes standards for both private scale, basically puts into code what our current policies are for private scale solar installations. And it also, more importantly, and most of the detail that we'll discuss, establishes regulations for commercial scale facilities. As certified, the certified version of the text included standards for those commercial scale facilities, including separations from surrounding dwellings, schools, churches, and then also buffering requirements, which were established as a sliding scale, depending on how close you were, how close the panels are to a facility, off-site residence, and so on, determine how close the panels could be. The overall process is an overlay rezoning, goes through the Plan Commission and then to you as commissioners, after which point, if that rezoning overlay is approved, then the commercial solar facility could go in as a development plan, which gets reviewed by Plan Commission again for adherence with the different regulations, and then to iron out additional details. So it's basically a 2-step process, 3-step if you include the step for the commissioners. As discussed, There was some discussion about decommissioning, which is at the other end of the life cycle. Most solar facilities are expected to have a life expectancy of 20 to 30 years, let's just say that. So decommissioning is what happens if they're not reused. We encourage reuse of a location in code, but of course not every site can or should be reused. So what happens then? As originally certified, and as many other communities do, a decommissioning bond is required, a decommissioning plan is required, and there are some decommissioning standards. That bond is proposed to be held by the county if and when it needs to be pulled in order to make sure that all of the solar panels are removed in accordance with those standards. And the plan would also specify how that decommissioning should occur. As I understand it, there's a little concern about the county holding that bond. So looking at some of the other options around the state and the three alternatives that I've given to you at the last meeting, I think the numbering order is a little out of order. So it's alternative 2 is the next step down, which is still requiring a plan, still requiring some standards, but and a bond or a surety, but the surety is actually being held by the landowner rather than by the county. And if and when the time comes that it needs to be decommissioned, the county would say, landowner, pull that bond that you have against the solar developer so you can decommission in accordance with plan and standards. So that's what was labeled our alternative 2 and what I handed out. Alternative 1 removes the surety requirement entirely. As a code requirement, there may still be sureties required, possibly if part of a plan, but the plan is required and standards are required. Standards in all these cases, all the cases where the standards are required, it's how deep down do you go for removal of cabling and concrete foundations and so on. So that's alternative 1 is plan and standards. And then alternative 3 is just simply requiring a plan for decommissioning without any real specific standards. The intention being that every site is a little different. Standards may be one size fits all, so you can't really put them across the board. One other way, which I did not give you as an alternative, because I got the sense that you didn't want to go you didn't want to go there, is just to remove all decommissioning entirely. And as far as I know, only one county in the state has no decommissioning requirements whatsoever. Everybody else at least requires some sort of statement of a plan, or has standards, or has sureties required. So again, kind of a high level summary of everything. Of course, I could go into way more detail, but do you have any questions?
So many. I don't know where to start. Joanne Knowles here, and I value her opinion on a lot of things. Would you mind just speaking a little bit on your understanding of what's being proposed? I'm putting you on the spot, and you can tell me no. But
I guess my opinion is that these are not public projects, as many people think they are. They are not utilities. They are private contracts between individual landowners and private corporations. As such, I don't think the public should be on the hook at all for 1 cent of cleaning this up. If a private landowner wants to be part of a project and they're going to be the ones receiving the lease payments, we don't require any other neighbors to clean up the trash that's left by their neighbor's rental tenant. And that's exactly what a wind developer or a solar developer is. They're a rental tenant on someone's land and they put their stuff there. We expect them to clean up their stuff when they leave. So I guess that's my biggest thing is, and my other concern is with the sliding scale on the setbacks. I'm a firm believer that every non-participant property should be protected with a significant setback. Not from their home necessarily, although that can be included, but initially it should be from a property line. Because I own my entire property, I don't just own the postage stamp that my house sits on. So if every property is protected with the same significant setback, then the developer is absolutely free to negotiate with every property that they need in their project. And every person gets a say on how their own property is used. The developer is absolutely free to negotiate a good neighbor agreement and compensate every person for the use of whatever property they need that belongs to them. Those are my two biggest concerns.
Okay. And that first concern that she addressed, that really closely aligns with that alternate two.
I would say that it actually more closely aligns with the as certified version because the county is holding the surety. And so you're not reliant upon the property owner to pull that bond. The county as a government authority can hold that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jim.
I'm assuming the county holds it. What happens to, if the county has full bond, depending on how much it is, it was suggested in the original certified version, I believe, that the amount of the decommissioning could be reduced by the amount of salvage. I think that's a crash. Solar panels reduce their effectiveness by a significant percentage every year. By the end of 20 years, there's no resale value to use them as solar panels. Right now, I don't know of any facility in this country that is reclaiming materials out of solar panels just because it's simply too expensive. So I don't think the decommissioning should be reduced by any sort of salvage. The county's not in the business of salvage. If the person who does the reclamation and does the decommissioning, if they want to salvage materials and see what they can get out of it, fine, that's your project, you go ahead. But the county's not in the business of doing that. So I don't think that should be pulled. I mean, I don't think there should be a reduction. But if the county does have to get involved, for instance, when we clean up another site of somebody that doesn't, I don't know, track ordinance or whatever, we have to clean up a site. Is that then put on the individual properties as a tax lien? Is that how that's done?
Typically.
So is that the thinking behind if the county has to pull a bond and bond doesn't cover significant amount, does that then get put onto the actual leased property owners as a tax lien? Is that what happens to it?
It would require zoning enforcement action as well in order to do that. Hopefully, and the intent is to have the surety in replacement for the zoning enforcement action. So you pull the surety, and you're right, it may or may not cover the whole thing. But assuming it does, then you don't have to go through the zoning enforcement action, which would be the courts. If hypothetically the bond is held by a private landowner, or there is no surety, then we'd be looking directly at a zoning enforcement action saying you need to decommission as was required by your plan or by our standards and whatever that means is.
I just want to make sure that the county taxpayers who are not part of this project are not held responsible for cleaning it up.
Yep.
I guess I don't understand why they would be. I mean, where would be a scenario where one of these was out of operation and the county would be in there cleaning it up? It's not a landfill or something that we own. It's private property. Why would we?
I think
I
George.
guess I
has a
don't
point.
understand why that would ever
Yeah.
be an issue.
The thinking is, let's say hypothetically there's a hailstorm goes through and the entire solar facility is completely damaged and goes offline, gets abandoned. And the operator walks away entirely. And there is however many acres of broken down solar panels sitting there.
Okay.
And so it's an eyesore.
Right.
There's potential for long-term contamination, although solar panels panels don't have very many hazardous materials in them. There are potentially some, but it's mostly an eyesore. And so is it on the landowner to clean that up? Is it to sit?
Why would that be on the county, I guess? That would be on the landowner to clean it up, just like anything else.
Right. So the thinking is either you can go forward as a zoning enforcement action to say, landowner, you're in violation of the zoning ordinance, you need to clean this up. Or the surety backs that up one step to say, we have money that we can hold against the developer, clean it up on their dime. Joanne's point is that surety may or may not be sufficient in the long term, but that's where that surety comes in.
I mean, I guess you could think of a hypothetical for anything, I guess. And if that's the hypothetical, potentially it's possible. I just can't imagine a situation where the county is going to be cleaning up solar. So, I mean, but
And we had this discussion when we went through the initial discussions, and George, it was one that you were part of. We don't require sureties for any other, say, industrial properties when they go in, even though there's a chance that they may contaminate the soil. We do for wind. Where does solar fall? I mean, again, this was a hypothetical with the Plan Commission, but hypothetically, should we start looking at sureties or something like that for cleaning up industrial properties in case another Wayne waste happens? Where's the threshold? Where do we feel comfortable with where government gets involved?
But anymore, we have IDEM that really controls any materials, hazardous materials that, especially in businesses.
yeah, but they have no, IDEM can enforce it against an owner that no longer has any interest in the property. I mean, if you're going to start doing what you're discussing, that could go in a million directions.
Yeah.
And, anybody that potentially could contaminate soil now has to post a surety in this county. It's going to stifle lots of things, not just solar.
Because you're talking about potential, and there, every business probably has a
Manufacturer,
potential.
Every farmer, I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to go a lot of places that we don't want to go.
So I think to Joanne's point, so they'll have a bond, they'll hold the bond. If it's more than the bond is for, a lien will be put on the property. Correct? So would not be on,
Right, you have to go through the process
Sure.
to do that. And ideally, the surety would cover it, so you wouldn't have to, but yes.
but we could.
That would be the backup.
Okay. And that was alternate two that we were discussing with the bond being held with the landowner.
With the landowner, yes. Alternate one was bond was being held.
Personally, I believe that alternate two kind of satisfies everything that we're saying.
A lot of these too, having looked at some of these leases, I mean, they may have additional requirements for how this decommissioning is done. You're just setting the kind of the minimum threshold standards. Some of them have higher requirements to that, and some of them I think are tied directly to what you do. So it is important to remember that some of them say, hey, if the county requires it, we'll do X, Y, and Z. And so to a certain extent, you may be setting the standard. In some instances, the contractual relationship between the parties will be kind of defining the decommissioning.
And yeah, my conversations with a couple of the solar representatives, that's been the case. Some landowners have a very long list of conditions as part of their lease agreement, and much more strict than the government ever could be.
I guess my thought on this is, this is an important ordinance for the future of Whitley County. It really is. And I think, I try to consider if we really vetted this out well, and, wouldn't it be worthwhile to table this for another 2 weeks or a month, just to make sure that we've taken a look at all the issues that we have that have been brought up.
I know it was in Plan Commission's hands for a very long time. And I've spoken to multiple members on the board. They seem okay with it. I know that we are changing what they passed so that the bond is on the landowner. But Commissioner Trump, if you would like to think about it more, I would be willing to.
Well, I
sit at the
guess
table.
it's all of us that we need to make sure that we're comfortable with what this ordinance is. And again, because of the fact that it is an important ordinance, I'd feel more comfortable if we did.
I'm comfortable with it. I know I've gone through it line by line, but if you would
Okay.
like to take more time, I'm perfectly fine with that as well.
And I would be fine with tabling or passing.
Just one reminder that there is a 90-day clock, and that 90 days is up at November 17th.
I
From
guess
what
if you're-
Plan Commission passed.
Correct.
I'm
That's it.
comfortable with
Okay.
option 2.
Okay.
You want to wait?
If you're comfortable with it,
Okay, I'll make a motion that, what is the ordinance number?
The ordinance number is 2022-7.
I will make a motion that we pass ordinance 2022-17.
and that would be with option 2.
Alternate two, I'm sorry.
And just for the record, could you state a brief description that it's the surety to the property owner?
That the homeowner, or I'm sorry, the landowner holds the bond and not the county if decommissioning has to take place.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that the right version is attached to the ordinance after the meeting.
Anything else, Nathan?
Have I mentioned US 30 to you guys in the public meeting lately and the status of that?
I think you have, but it would be great to get an update.
Okay, just a quick update. US 30, NDOT is progressing forward for everyone's sake. They have started a PEL study, which is, I forget what the acronym stands for, but basically it's a preliminary study for what should be done with US 30 and 31. And 30 and 31 are broken into 4 segments. We're lumped in for the study purpose with Allen and Gadsden counties, and then the others are in different segments. So NDOT is seeking public input. If you look up Propel US 30 online, there's opportunities to sign up for a mailing list and then also offer suggestions and so on. The local planning committee is looking to get, if we're asked, we're looking to get stakeholders together to meet with NDOT to give them more guidance. They were very appreciative of the work that we've already done. We did present that to them directly. We kind of did a lot of their work for them already in terms of the PEL. The PEL is very similar to what we already did. They're required to do certain things we didn't do, and in that document, we did certain things that they aren't going to do. So the study is a 2-year time frame. So by the end of 2024, it will garner about 3 to 5 recommended alternatives of what to do with US 30. Do nothing may be an option, although it doesn't seem like a likely option, but it may be an option. From which then they will proceed forward with, assuming funding is available, always funding is available, they'll proceed forward with the formal environmental studies for whichever is the proposed, recommended preferred alternative. So 2 years from now, give or take, we should have a good sense as to what NDOT will be recommending. And then a few years after that, we may start to see things start to move with US 30 based on that alternative. I also add that there may be a couple projects that might be developed that are already in the works for US 30. In Allen County, the interchange for Amazon, for example, has been in the books for a couple of years. So those may go on concurrent with these studies. So we may see a few things happening, but the grander plan would be longer. So. Any other questions for me?
Mhm.
No, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan.
In our last meeting, we went over the Indiana DNR grant application for the Thomas R. Marshall Home, and there was a question about one of the three parts of that grant application. And that was, there was a question about the what's it called?
Oh, there was one about the
ADA, it was the ADA requirement. We looked into that. We found that it's totally fine that if we do the covenant acknowledgement form, the ADA compliance isn't really an issue at this point.
Yeah.
For the grant application.
That's what came from.
Yeah. So I would ask that for part 3 of that application that we would approve the covenant acknowledgement form that we discussed it in our last meeting.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. We can go over that later.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is payroll and accounts payable claims. I did have a chance to go upstairs and review. The only thing that stood out to me was the invoice for Larwell Sewer. I think that's our last invoice, right? I'm kind of thinking that it's the last one that we'll see for that project, and that was somewhere around 95,000. Does that sound right? The invoice that we just received was somewhere around 95,000. That's not something that we normally see. It stood out to me, but that was something that the commissioners had approved, I believe, in 2020 to use on-site, off-site funds from the CDEP to pay for that project. So I think it's now complete and we can finally pay the last bill.
Thank goodness.
That's been a long, ongoing thing. Other than that, everything looked normal.
I'll make a motion to approve payroll.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve payroll. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
I'll make a motion to approve the accounts receivable as presented.
Second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. While we're signing, I just wanted to take a minute to welcome Brad Allen, who is our new county engineer. It's been a long time coming. We've searched for a long time, but we're super excited to have you. And Brad comes to us from GII Consultants. And so we know that you've got plenty of experience and we're just really excited to have you on board.
And he's a Whitley County resident. I'm sorry, what did you say?
The next item on the agenda is our previous meeting minutes approval. And these minutes are from September 19th, 2022.
I'll make a motion that we approve the September 19th, 2022 minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand.
I do believe we might need a second, because this is a different one. You have to sign for that DNR. matching share form.
So there were 4 total forms.
Tammy, is that right? They need to make 2 motions for that DNR matching share form and the covenant? Okay, yes, because she said the matching change to this.
Okay, okay. I got it. Okay, so in our last meeting, when we approved the matching share form for that DNR grant for the Commissar Marshall home, since then, the amount has changed. It's still within the amount that was approved by commissioners previously. But since that amount changed, we'll need to also, once again, approve the matching share form.
I'll make a motion that we approve the matching share form for the from the CEDAP funds
Second.
as presented.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Yeah, we'll see. Matt, do you have anything else to add?
I do know.
Tiffany,
Not at this time.
is there anything from the audience that anyone would like to add?
There's going to be a vote on allowing the grant money to pay for the Blue Lake culvert.
So that was actually included in our ARPA ordinance that was passed earlier today. So that's actually something that was approved.
Where do we go?
Tomorrow at 8 a.m. Well, I don't think it's the first thing on the agenda, but it'll be in that meeting that starts at 8 a.m.
If we show up for that.
You can, there's a couple council here, I believe, if you'd like to speak, or maybe just one. Tom, are you the only one today?
Kind of looks like it.
Yeah, we're going to show up. I'll be there to make sure. 8 o'clock.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to add? Okay, Commissioner Trump,
Nothing.
Commissioner Basinger,
Nothing.
and I have nothing to add, so I will adjourn the meeting.